Hi everyone, this is Dr. Ford. So, while I am going to hold a live Zoom meeting with you all next week, I wanted to create a lecture of sorts so that you understand why you're building the concept paper. I know it's been talked about and discussed and everything, but there is a method to the madness for this particular research class. I know some of you think that you've already started your dissertation, and might have started it, but there really needs to be a lot of thought. Some of the things that I found when looking at the literature reviews is some literature is pretty old, and you need to you need to conduct literature review throughout. You can't just say, here's my literature, now I'm moving on. I mean, of course, there comes a point where you have to do that, but you really need to understand about choosing the right research method. So I want to tie this in to your activities that you did in the now weeks 1 and 2, which was the introduction part of your concept paper. And then in weeks 3 and 4, you provided your literature review. So some of you have already believed that you have determined your best research method. And the purpose of this lecture is to get you to really think, is this the best method for conducting my research? So, titled Choosing the Right Research Method. Okay, so as you know, there are types of research methods. So I don't have to reiterate this. Quantitatives, numbers and measurements, qualitatives, meaning and experience, mixed methods, and an integration of both. So one of the things that a lot of students do is they decide before they've done all of their literature review, I'm going to conduct quantitative study. I'm going to conduct qualitative study. But you really need to ensure that you tie the type of research to your chosen method. And your research method you choose should directly reflect what you're trying to say or find out. So I've chosen a topic for this lecture, and it is going to be about leadership, okay? I did my dissertation on leadership. I still study leadership for clients, so it's a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart. So the examples I'm going to provide you are going to kind of lean toward that leadership in this part of the lecture. So my question might be, does leadership training improve millennials' confidence in leading teams? Because as you know, millennials are, I believe it's 29 to 44, it might be 28 to 44, might be the demographic. So you've got millennials who are going to be moving into leadership roles. So ensuring they have the right training methods is critical. So, but let's say my question is, does leadership training improve millennials' confidence in leading teams? I'm looking for some kind of measurable change. So it's a quantitative question. If I ask that question, it's quantitative. And it's best answered with surveys or assessments before and after training. So if I'm trying to measure leadership, then again, let's design the leadership and let's ask questions. Let's give them the training and then ask questions. So we've got some comparative, and this will help track shifts in their confidence levels. If my question is, how do millennials describe their growth as leaders after training? I'm exploring personal experience and meaning. So that's a qualitative question. This is ideal if I'm going to interview folks or create focus groups that captured their reflections or challenges and their evolving leadership identity. So if you are able to do that kind of research, then you are doing okay with qualitative. But you've got to have you've got to be able to have access to those people. So what if my question is, what is the measurable impact and perceived value of leadership training among millennials? Well, I'm asking how much and how it feels. Therefore, I am leaning toward mixed methods. So I want to say your method is not chosen randomly. It's chosen because it's the best tool to answer the questions you're asking. That's what makes your research purposeful and powerful. That's why you don't just start writing chapter 1 thinking, I'm doing quantitative, I'm doing qualitative, I'm doing mixed methods. Your method, again, it's not chosen randomly. So I want to move on to the next slide, and let's just talk about quantitative research. I'm not going to read these particular bullet points because you can stop the video, but as you know, quantitative research is focused on numbers, measurement, and statistical analysis. It's the method that you go to when you want to test a hypothesis or identify patterns across a population. So let's say I'm evaluating a leadership development program for millennials. A quantitative approach might involve administering a pre and post training survey, like a Likert scale, to measure the changes in their leadership confidence. You could also track attendance, completion rates, performance metrics over time. So this is especially useful when you need to generalize findings. Let's say you have 200 participants in a field and are in your survey, and you find a statistically significant increase in the confidence scores. Then you can reasonably infer that the program that you've designed has a measurable impact. So quantitative methods are also great for benchmarking. You might compare confidence levels across different groups, industries, training formats like in person or virtual to see which is most effective. So let's go on to the qualitative research. It's all about depth and concept. It's used when we want to understand how people experience something. Not just what happened, but how it felt, what it meant, and how it changed them. In the context of leadership training, again, I'm going to use this particular example because it's easier than trying to pick a bunch of different topics. But let's say a qualitative study might ask my participants, how do you describe your growth as a leader? Then I would conduct interviews or focus groups and analyze the responses for themes like did their self-awareness increase? Did their communication improve? Or was there a shift in their identity as a leader? So this method is valuable when the topic is complex or personal. So, example that millennials might be overcoming imposter syndrome. So we were redefining leadership in collaborative terms or navigating generalization expectations in the workplace. These insights wouldn't show up in a survey. They require open-ended and reflective dialogue. So qualitative research is also flexible. You can adapt your questions as new themes emerge. That's what's so nice about qualitative research. It allows the data to guide your inquiry. So it's great for exploratory studies, program evaluations, or when you're developing theory from a lived experience. So if you've got access to people that you can sit down with, then qualitative research is definitely a good approach for you. So let's talk about mixed methods. It combines both quantitative and qualitative approaches. It's very useful when your research question is complex or when you need to understand measurable impact and a lived experience. Let's say you're evaluating a leadership training for millennials. You might start with a survey to measure changes in leadership confidence. So you've got quantitative data there. Then you follow up with interviews to explore how the participants describe their growth. So now you've got qualitative data. So this dual approach will allow you to answer questions like, did the training work? Yes or no? I mean, there you go, quantitative data. How did it work and what did it mean to the participants? Now you've got qualitative. So you might find that the confidence scores increased by 20%, but interviews reveal that participants felt more empowered because they learned to lead collaboratively rather than competitively. That insight would not emerge with numbers alone. So mixed methods can also help you validate findings. If your survey data and your interview themes point to improved self-awareness, you can be more confident in your conclusions. It is a powerful way to tell a fuller, more nuanced story. I use that word story because I teach a lot of data analytics classes, and we talk about data storytelling. And you may not come across that as much in a research methods class, but that's the thing that you are doing. It all comes down to telling a story with data. Okay? So, why do we choose mixed methods? Because they may want to capture both measurable outcomes and the lived experience of participants. I know I already said that, but in the slide before, but in a study on leadership training, you might find that the confidence scores again increased by 20%, but our interviews reveal that participants felt more empowered because they learned to lead more collaboratively. So that kind of insight won't come up in numbers alone. Second, mixed methods strengthen the validity through triangulation. If your survey data and interview themes both point to improved self-awareness, then you've got more confidence in your conclusions. And this approach, mixed method, is very, very ideal when you're asking complex questions. So leadership development isn't just about skills acquisition. It's about identity, values, and interpersonal dynamics. So mixed methods can help you explore those layers regardless. So think about your own research. So finally, mixed methods offer flexibility. You can design your study in phases. You can start with a broad survey. Then you could drill down with interviews or run both components concurrently. So this is an adaptability method that allows you to be more effective with your response to emerging findings or stakeholder needs. So in short, mixed methods bridge the gap between numbers and narratives. It gives you a fuller, more nuanced understanding of your topic. So, aligning the method with your question. So here is a research question. Again, I'm going with the leadership theme. So what is the impact of a professional development program on participant growth? So my method of choice should reflect my research question or questions. Quantitative, how much? Qualitative is how does it do it or why? And a mixed method approach gives you a full story. So my question there is intentionally broad, so I can adapt it to different content text, like leadership training for millennials, if I wanted to focus just on that demographic. So if I want to understand both the measurable outcomes and the personal experience, I'd use a mixed method approach. I collect survey data and follow up with interviews, and it triangulates my finding. The key is to let your research questions guide your method. Don't let your method guide your research questions, because this alignment ensures that your data is meaningful and your conclusions are valid. So here's a case study comparison, and again, using my leadership theme. So I've got a table here that shows you how each method aligns with a different kind of research question. So I'm going to walk through it using the examples of a leadership training program for millennials. So a quantitative study might ask, does the training improve leadership confidence? I would use a pre and post survey with scaled questions so I could measure change. Therefore, my outcome would be statistical. I would see something like, oh, there's a 15% increase in my confidence scores before and after training. So my qualitative study might ask, how do participants describe their leadership growth? Then I'd conduct interviews or focus groups and analyze the responses for themes such as, again, increased self-awareness, improved communication, or even a shift in the leadership style. That is a thematic insight. My mixed method. What is the impact and perceived value of the training? Then I would combine both approaches. I want to measure the outcomes, but I also want to understand their personal experience. This provides a more comprehensive view of both the changes and the significance of the training for these individuals. So the method of choice isn't just technical, it's strategic. So again, don't let your research question drive your method. It's the other way around. So one of the other things that I want to talk about is why you are reviewing literature continuously. So this kind of ties back to in the first weeks 1 and 2, you did the initial post of your concept paper, that piece of the concept paper. Then you were asked to provide literature. This cluster of weeks 5 and 6, you are going to provide revised research questions. And some of you may think, I'm not revising, but what did the literature tell you? Literally. So it's not, reviewing your literature is not a one-time step. It's an ongoing process that strengthens your research at every stage. So again, let's talk about leadership training for millennials. Early literature might suggest that millennials value collaborative leadership and purpose-driven work. But newer studies could reveal a shift toward digital leadership skills or resilience in remote environments. Because, again, think about the shift in leadership and what's happened over the last few years where more people are working remote. Yes, I realize that a lot of companies are calling people back into the office, but leading a group remotely, that can be a challenge in and of itself. So continuous review of the literature helps you refine your hypotheses. So you might initially assume that millennials prefer some kind of peer-led training. However, recent findings may suggest they respond better to mentorship models. This could really reshape your assumptions and the design of your study. That's why just because you've written chapter 1 and then you really dig into the literature doesn't mean chapter 1 is done. You may need to go back to chapter 1. Trust me, been there, done that. So reviewing your literature continuously, it also helps you choose the right method. If the literature shows that leadership growth is often described personal narrative terms, you might want to lean toward a qualitative or mixed methods, even if you started with a quantitative plan. I also want to state that staying current ensures your work is relevant. Leadership expectations evolve rapidly. So do other topics, not just leadership, especially when you're looking at different generations. So reviewing the literature helps you stay aligned with what matters now, not what mattered 5 years ago. So one common pitfall that I see when students limit their literature search to studies, and I find this often, is if they try to limit it to their own geographic region, local relevance is essential, absolutely. Strong research draws from a wide range of resources, including international studies, to build a robust foundation. Why? because similar problems may have already been studied elsewhere, and those findings can offer valuable insights, theoretical frameworks, or I can't say the word methodological. I'm sorry, models that can be applied across contexts. For example, if you're researching leadership development, studies from other countries might reveal trends in mentorship, digital leadership, and generalization preferences that help you shape your own study, even if your population is different. The goal isn't to say there's no data here in my geographic region, but to ask, what do we know about this issue globally, and how can I build on that knowledge for my own context? That's how you identify meaningful gaps and contribute to a broader academic conversation. So prioritize relevance. Don't restrict your scope. Expanding your literature review strengthens your rationale, it sharpens your questions, and improves the credibility of your research design. So, more on refining your method through literature. So, once you've reviewed the literature, the next step is to use it to refine your method. It doesn't just inform your topic, it helps shape how you study it. For example, if you're researching leadership development, prior studies could show that confidence is often measured using a validated scale, such as the Leadership Self-Efficacy Index. That gives you a tested tool to consider. But you may also find that successful studies employed a mixed method designed with sequential phases, beginning with a survey, followed by interviews. This model could inspire your own structure. Importantly, literature helps you justify your choices. If somebody asks why you chose interviews over focus group, you can point to studies that use similar methods more effectively in comparable contexts. Think way ahead when you get to defending your dissertation. You're going to be asked questions like this. Why did you only choose qualitative? Why did you only choose quantitative? So your literature review and your method being defined through your literature helps you justify your choices. But remember, you're not copying what somebody else is doing. You're adapting. Use the literature to enhance your design, clarify your rationale, and ensure that your methods are both credible and contextually appropriate. So I've got some final thoughts here. So, choosing a research method isn't just a technical decision, it's a strategic one. Your method must align with your research question, and that question should evolve as you engage with the literature. Don't treat the literature review as a one-time task. It's a continuous process that helps you refine your focus, challenge your assumptions, and justify your design. Whether you're studying leadership, education, or social behavior, staying current ensures your work is relevant and rigorous. Mixed methods could be especially powerful when your topic is complex. It offers you both measurable outcomes and rich contextual insights. Use them when your question demands both breadth and depth. And finally, while your local context is important, strong research connects to the broader academic conversation. Draw from global studies, adapt what's useful, and contribute something meaningful in return. Good research is intentional, informed, and adaptable. That's the mindset I hope that you can carry forward. Now, for the second piece of this, I am going to show you an example of some research. Okay, I worked on this all day today. Well, not all day, but a good part of the day. So I'm starting out with, this is not leadership. This is something completely different. It's a data set that I had. So I've got my research questions and hypothesis. I think that I want to examine the relationship between the demographic, academic, and mental health factors and students' decisions to seek professional treatment. So therefore, I'm going to write this research question. What demographic, academic, and mental health factors predict whether university students seek professional treatment for mental health concerns? So, as you can see, I've written my hypotheses. I think, wow, yes, yes, here I am. I'm on my way. I'm ready to rock and roll. Well, now I'm going to look at my literature. Uh oh, what did I find? Well, I find that in my gaps, that it doesn't explore. So this is my first article. So I've got it's a survey with a multiple regression analysis, and my gap is it does not explore how students interpret resilience or its role in decision making. So for my design, the implications to my design is I need to include open-ended items to explore how students define and perceive resilience in relation to help seeking. This is here's another article where I'm looking of this widespread treatment gaps and common barriers and stigma, and they did 62 quantitative studies. But the gap is it doesn't provide a voice to the students. So there you go. I've got a design implication of I need to add a qualitative component to my survey. So again, I'm not going to read each one of these. I am going to give you this as a handout, but I'm not going to read each one of these. But I want to incorporate items that allow students to describe what influences their decision to or not to seek help, okay? And again, as you can see, the more I researched on students' mental health behaviors, I'm finding that my design implications indicate to me I need more than just quantitative data. Do they or don't they? I'm not telling a good story. Okay, they don't. Why don't they? If you go back to the questions that I provided in on the slides. You've got your question. Why? Why is that happening? Why don't they ask for help? So, anyhow, again, as you can see, as I've reviewed my literature, I'm finding all kinds of things that are telling me that what I think I wanted to study is still relevant, but I'm not looking at a full picture. So again, I'm not going to go over the rest of these. I only did 6 for this demonstration. So I wrote this up. Following a comprehensive review of my recent literature review, it became evident that a purely quantitative approach is insufficient. And it's not going to capture the complexity of this phenomenon. Now, while the survey-based studies have identified demographic and academic predictors, they fall short in explaining emotional reasoning and contextual influences that help shape students' decisions. So again, I'm not going to read all of this. So what I decided to do now, and this, I want you to think about this as you do 5 and the assignment for this week. Go back to what you provided in that original component of your concept paper where you wrote your research questions and stuff. Look at what your literature. Look at your literature review. Have you clearly identified the gaps? Have you discussed or identified the implications on your study? Is what you have initially decided to study or the method going to give you the best insight for that particular study? So what I did now is I wrote a new purpose statement. I've got a mixed method study that I'm going to examine the demographic, academic, and mental health factors and that influence their decision to avoid professional treatment. And I want to explore the personal reasons why they avoid treatment. So I talk about my quantitative strand. Again, I'm not going to read all this to you because I'll give this as a handout. So I've revised my research question. What demographic, academic, and mental health factors influence university students' decision to seek or avoid professional treatment, and how do students explain their reasonings for not seeking help? So, my quantitative, I didn't have to change my quantitative hypotheses. So, with my research question, I'm integrating statistical predictors, and I'm also looking at personal reasoning and lived experience. So again, I didn't have to change my hypothesis statements from the quantitative. I just had to update my research question and then write assumptions for the qualitative part. And now I've got my assumptions. So what I did was I have a survey instrument, and what I did was this was taken from a data set in on Kaggle called Student Mental Health, but I generated and I used Chat GPT, well, actually Copilot, to help me generate synthetic data because the survey that I found that I thought would be helpful in helping me design my own didn't have any open-ended questions. So I added an open-ended question, and so I have no way of interviewing students, of course, or the students who responded to that survey. So I generated synthetic data. That's a no-no for real research, but this is for demonstration purposes. So generating some responses was fine. So now what I've done is here's my survey. I'm asking their gender, their GPA, what's their course of study, how many years, do they have depression? Do they have anxiety? Do they have panic attacks? Did they seek a specialist? So this is all my quantitative. So again, as you can see, I'm still okay here with my quantitative hypotheses, but I added, why didn't you seek treatment? And then they provided a reason. So if they answered no, did you seek treatment? It prompted them to answer that question. So, and then again, I talked about it, the data set used in this demonstration, because again, I don't want you to think I went out and did this survey on my own, because I didn't do that. So, I want to show you, I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I want to show you how much richer my analysis would be using a mixed method. So if I was just using quantitative, here are some of the things that I would look at. Okay, so I've got, do they have depression? 34% said yes. Do you have anxiety? 33 said yes. Do you have panic attacks? 32 said yes. So of course, in true research, I have discussed the results of the figure. So this is something I would look at immediately. Now I want to look at it based on my how many students responded based on their gender. So 74% of the students who responded are female. So now I have the GPA. Most students, as you can see, the highest amount of students are in the 3 to 4.0 range. That is the highest ranking group. And then I looked at by gender. So 93% of females did not seek treatment. 96.2% of males did not seek treatment. I also wanted to see how they based on their GPA range, who sought treatment. So of the 2.5 to 2.9, 50% of respondents in that GPA range did seek treatment. So as you can see, look at these folks up here in the 3.5 to 4. No, they didn't seek treatment. So again, I've got more quantitative analysis of those who have reported depression. And then I look at those who have panic attacks. And then, so again, I've looked at the different elements that I wrote in my hypothesis statements and I've interpreted. But let me show you what else I found. Because again, if I go back and I look at the percentage of people who did not seek treatment, it is, here we go. Such a large percentage of students did not seek treatment. Why? Why is that happening? Why do they not? That's why my quantitative data or research is not telling a good story. It's telling some of the story, but not a good story. So then what I did, and I'm just going to state, I used Python to do all my analysis. Remember, I'm a coder, so I did that. And I wrote up something because, again, I want to share this handout with you. And I also want to state, I did not follow complete APA for this. I don't do that for my demonstrations. But that doesn't mean that when you submit something that you shouldn't. So here we go. So in the open-ended, I found that stigma and identity was the top. So I didn't want to seem weak or unstable. I was afraid people would judge me or label me. I thought I could handle it on my own. Well, my family doesn't believe in mental health stuff. I was struggling because I didn't know how to talk. So for the design implication, we could use peer stories, use anonymous forums or peer-led outreach, teach symptom thresholds and coping limits. Now I'm finding something from my data that can tell me how I can help these students and address cultural barriers or find ways to work it into the curriculum. So again, now I'm telling a better story with my data. So I've got my descriptive statistics here where I've taken everything from those graphs that I did, and I've got there were 207 students, or actually maybe there were more, there were more in here. 224 self-reported. Out of 224, 56% said they have anxiety. 20% said that they experience panic attacks. 49, or let's round it up to 50%, said they experience depression. And look at this, a whopping 76% said they did not seek treatment. So I have a final discussion here. This is something you would do. But I wanted to share this with you because, as I said, my thought was, I'm going to make this easy on myself for my dissertation. I'm going to just do a quantitative study because I'm working with numbers and it's easy. But the more I researched and found literature on the topic, if I'm going to study college students, and I'm finding a high percentage of those who do not seek any kind of treatment, I need to know why. I need to know how to help them. Or not me, myself, but we need to know how to help them. I mean, this could lead to, deeper analysis of drop rates in students. Are those students who've reported depression, have they dropped out of school or have they stayed? If they stayed, did they seek treatment? Again, by looking at my literature and expanding my study, I have more information to really inform the research around mental health with students. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to give you a handout of the PowerPoint presentation and of this research, bit of research paper that I wrote. And then we'll have our live meeting next week. See you then.